Akemashite omedetou! Happy New Year and welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday, the first of 2022. Today we're looking at the next requirement for the blue belt with a stripe, the 7th Q level. We're going to address today blocking levels. At this point, we've pretty much blocked and then counter strike with the back or opposite side, whether it be a punch or a kick, whatever. So we block with one side, punch with the other, much like we would have a shield, and we would block and then have our sword on this side to fight behind the shield. Similar to the Kempo and Chinese bows, where we have the shield, or the holster, if you will, and the weapon inside. We have the shield to the front and the weapon to the back. Block, counter strike, opposite. This is level 1. Level 2 now, we're going to look at this level, which is to block and counter strike with the same hand. It's much faster, but it's much less powerful. And so this would be considered a setup blow or a softening blow, or in judo terminology, it would be irimi, the entry technique. So after my opponent has punched, he's going to bring his hand back. When we block and counter strike with the other hand, yes, it's powerful, but if he's punched and is bringing his hand back in, he can also block our punch. So it's block, punch, block, and we're just back and forth and back and forth. At the beginner level, that's fine. We're learning timing, distancing, power, those sorts of things, and balance. But when we get into sparring, and you still see this, even at advanced levels, because people get locked into this mode that I punch and then I block and you punch and then you block my punch and I block your punch, and we're back and forth. It's just block and a punch, and we're just trading, as opposed to being a little more efficient. So by blocking and hitting with the same hand, if my opponent has thrown his punch and his hand is coming back, I've blocked his punch and I'm following his hand back. We find the techniques for this already in at least how I teach it, and how I've seen most Okinawan and Japanese instructors teach the blocks. When I get ready to do the uchi-uke, for example, it's not a single arm moving in space through a big arc. It's one arm is extended as a prep, as a block, as a push, or whatever. The other hand comes under and pulls. And you can go back to my earlier vlogs on instruction for how to do the blocks. But there's always a push-pull motion, okay? This push and pull is a very key element to Okinawan martial arts, karate in particular. Even if it's only to pull a shoulder, pull it with this shoulder as the other shoulder goes forward, or to pull with this hip as the other hip. This push-pull motion is very important in balance, having power and balance both at the same time. So we already have it within our blocks. Now we're going to explore where we find the counterpunch. Where is the counterpunch from here? It's in the prep for my next block. So if I don't prepare, if I've done my number 1, my right hand uchi-uke block, and then I'm going to prepare to do my number 2 uchi-uke block, this hand coming forward becomes my counter strike. Block, chokosuki, counter strike, or block, kizamiusuki, following as a jab with the footstep. And again, it's not a power strike, it's an irimi, or a setup for what's to come as I continue forward with grabbing, throwing, kicking, punching, whatever else I'm going to do. So, number 1 with the strike, number 2 with the strike. Uchi-uke, chokosuki. Okay? Number 3 and 4, which again, arguably, whether they're Seidokan or not, and go back to that discussion as well, but we do have this block in Pinyan Shodan. We have an open hand version in Wansu, okay, where we come across the body with the hand. So there is occasion to use this. So I include this in my 8-point blocking approach. So on number 3, again, I have my prep hand forward, and I do my, not just a single arm, but I do a push-pull motion, number 3 block. Now I prep for my number 4 block, and as I bring this arm up, this hand, my forward hand that just blocked, goes here. So again, if I isolate that, there's my strike. Soto-uke, tetsui. Outside in block, hammer fist, striking side of the jaw, temple, even low to the rib or wherever, follow to the groin as we do in one-two. So block and hammer. Now, before I finish the others, you could substitute any strike, but the idea is that I'm going from the position I'm in and immediately striking with the same hand from that position without an extra chambering or withdrawing of the hand. I block and I follow his hand back toward his body, taking advantage of that opening. Okay? So again, Soto Uke Tetsui for number 3 and 4. Number 5 block we'll find in the Seisan Kata. In Seisan, from here, we do a back fist. And the emphasis is on the Riken, the downward falling back fist. But what happens on the way into that back fist is my arm is coming up so that I can drop my elbow and create some snapping rotation for that back fist. And within that rising, what do we have? We have our next block, Ageuke. So from Ageuke, we drop into the Riken. It's very natural to follow that in. Now sometimes I might be on, if I'm blocking with my right hand to his right, I don't want to press his arm back into him. I'm sort of slipping from the block, I'm slipping behind his arm and then coming toward the face, chest, sternums, collarbone, whatever you're going to hit with the back fist. Number 5, with Riken, Ageuke, Riken. Our last of the 8-point blocking system is Gerambarai. Now we really don't have this strike. I teach it as a separate strike for the blue belt level, the 8th kyu, but we don't really see this strike appear until Goju Shiho Kata. And in Goju Shiho, the Keito Uchi, the rising chicken wrist. I block Gerambarai, chicken wrist, Keito Uchi. Gerambarai, Keito Uchi. Now notice there, after the block, there's a softening, a rounding, a curving of the elbow. So I don't lock and then stiff arm it. Block, lift from the elbow into the strike. Now for practice on the bag, which I'm going to do in a minute, this strike kind of rising is not because of the surface of the bag. I'm going this way, so it's kind of a scraping. So we can easily take it as a crossbody strike with the chicken wrist out of the block. So Gerambarai, Keito Uchi, number 7 and 8. That's our 8-point blocking system with strikes as I teach them. And again, substitute any strike as long as it follows the natural line of movement without excessive rechamber, retraction before the strike. I don't want to block, pull back, and strike. If I'm going to do that, I might as well hit with the opposite hand. Again, 8-point blocking system now all the way through, number 1 through 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we would take them, as with all of our techniques, we would take them moving around the dojo first. So we'd go 1 and strike. I have the forward hip. I'm not concerned with a whole lot of body dynamic here because it's just a quick strike. I'm already stepping into it. My hip is already forward. Number 3, 4, 5, for the sake of space, I'll go backwards. 6, 7, and 8. And that would be our 8-point blocking system with the strikes. Then, as with everything else, we're going to move to the back. Block, strike, block, strike, block, strike, block, strike. Left hand, repeat on the right, work it for some power on the back. Add a little bit of footwork. Got a slippery floor there. Add a little bit of footwork. Okay, maybe use it, and again, I do this, use it with a cat stance. So instead of coming forward here, blocking the cat, step into the strike. Blocking the cat, step into the strike. Same thing when I'm working the bag. So that I'm getting a little bit of snap and speed and get some impact training. Then the final level again would be to put that into Jiu Kumite, free sparring, starting it as a drill with my opponent. And as I said in the beginning, it's always interesting to see people block, and then counter punch, and I block, and it's just one and back and forth. So we want to start adding now, as my opponent attacks, I block strike with him, block strike with him, and we work that in the free movement of sparring. 8-point blocking system with strikes, progressing from static to walking to impact to jiukumite, using shikolachi or zenkutsudachi or kibarachi, yoko kibarachi, side horse stance, or neko ashidachi, cat stance. We might even use crane stance, right? Maybe he's throwing a blunt punch and a kick. Same thing, tsudo ashidachi. We can use any kind of movement and apply this quick entry. And again, if I'm blocking, striking, I wouldn't stop there. I continue with a follow-up, whatever else you're going to do subsequently. Okay? Thank you again for joining. Happy New Year again. Akemashite omedetou. And hopefully 2022 sees us having a good, strong Seidokan karate year. Enjoy. As always, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, tell me a joke, ask a question, leave a comment, spread it to your friends. And most importantly, keep practicing.